I still remember the exact moment everything changed. The moment I felt small in a room full of men who didn't see me for who I really was. I was standing there, heart pounding, holding out my credentials. Not just any credentials. Official documents proving my identity, my job, everything I had worked my entire life for. But instead of respect, I was met with laughter. A group of police officers smirked, exchanged knowing glances, and then one of them chuckled out loud. "Yeah, right, like we're gonna buy that," he sneered. Their eyes didn't just doubt me, they mocked me. I was invisible to them, just another woman trying to pretend she belonged in a place that was never meant for her. Shock froze me for a split second. How could they be so blind, so cruel? I wanted to shout, scream, make them see the truth that I was real, qualified, important. But the room felt heavy with disbelief, as if my words were nothing but whispers against a storm of prejudice. Still, deep inside, a fierce determination sparked. I wasn't going to let their laughter erase my worth. There was more at stake here, something bigger than just a confrontation. I knew I had to stand firm, because what they didn't realize was that beneath those official papers, behind that confident face, was a story they would never expect. And soon, everything they thought they knew about me would come crashing down. I'm not just someone walking into a room with papers in her hand. I'm a woman who has fought tooth and nail to be where I am today. My name is Maya, and I work in a high-level security position for a federal agency. This isn't some job I stumbled into. It's the result of years of dedication, studying late into the night, passing countless exams, and proving myself again and again in a world that wasn't always ready to accept me. I earned my degrees from top schools. I went through intense training programs that pushed me to my limits. I have clearances that took years to get. Every step of the way, I had to work twice as hard. Not because I was less capable, but because I was a black woman in spaces where people like me were rare and often underestimated. It's a reality I've faced every day of my career, a mix of pride in what I've accomplished and frustration over how little credit I sometimes receive. That day with the police, I was on official business. I had been sent to assist with a sensitive investigation involving a security breach in their jurisdiction. It was critical that I get access and cooperation to protect lives and national interests. I expected professionalism. Instead, I walked into a room where my credentials were treated like a joke, and my presence was questioned simply because of the color of my skin and the fact that I was a woman in a role they weren't used to seeing. I wanted to scream, look at my records, check my background. I'm not an imposter, but I knew that wasn't enough. This wasn't just about papers, it was about deep-seated doubts and biases that no document could instantly erase. I remember the exhaustion that settled in after years of fighting to be taken seriously, of having my expertise questioned, of constantly proving my worth. But I also remember the fire inside me, how every setback only made me more determined. That day, as the police laughed in my face, all those feelings came rushing back. But I wasn't about to back down. Because the truth was, I wasn't just fighting for myself anymore. I was fighting for every person who had ever been dismissed, ignored, or made to feel invisible. The moment I stepped into the police station, I felt a cold wave wash over me. I handed my credentials to the first officer who approached, official government-issued badges, IDs, clearances, all perfectly legitimate. But instead of a nod of acknowledgement, I was met with raised eyebrows and smirks. "Let me see that again," one officer said, barely hiding his amusement. As I repeated my name and title, the group of officers nearby started whispering, exchanging glances that made it clear they didn't believe me. Then came the laughter, a low mocking chuckle that quickly grew louder. "You expect us to believe you're some kind of federal agent?" One of them sneered, folding his arms as if daring me to prove him wrong. I stood there, shock mingling with a rising tide of anger. How could they treat me this way? My credentials weren't fake, my authority wasn't a joke, but their laughter wasn't just about disbelief, it was about something deeper. Their doubt wasn't just in my identity, it was in me, as a black woman, as a professional, as someone who deserved respect. I tried to stay calm. I pulled out every document I had, explaining my mission clearly and calmly. I told them why I was there, that the situation required urgent cooperation. But it was like talking to a wall. One officer leaned in, smiling condescendingly. "Look, sweetheart, we don't see many people like you around here with those kinds of papers. Maybe you're confused about who you are." His words cut deeper than any slap. The room grew tense as their skepticism hardened into outright rejection. They questioned my motives, accused me of impersonating an official, and even hinted that I might be trying to cause trouble. Fear crept in, the kind of helplessness that sinks into your bones when you realize the people who are supposed to protect and serve might become the very barrier standing in your way. I felt trapped, my voice shrinking even as my heart screamed. But beneath that fear, something fierce began to grow, a determination to prove them wrong. Not just for myself, but for every woman and every Black person who had ever been dismissed or doubted. I refused to back down. I asked them again to verify my identity, demanding they check their systems. I reminded them that I was on their side, that this was official business, and that delays could cost lives. The laughter stopped, but the doubt didn't. They continued to eye me suspiciously, whispering among themselves, their faces unreadable but hardening. That moment was a turning point. I realized that no amount of credentials could erase the prejudice written on their faces. I had to find another way. And that way came when Homeland Security got involved. Just when I thought the situation couldn't get any worse, when it felt like I was stuck in a room full of people who refused to see me, something changed. It was like the air shifted, but not because of me, it was because someone else was coming in to prove my truth. After their laughter and dismissive comments, I quietly asked if I could speak with someone higher up. They ignored me at first, but I insisted. I called the Homeland Security contact I had been working with before coming here. It was nerve-wracking to hear that my credibility was being questioned like this, but I needed backup. I needed someone with authority to confirm who I was. On the other end of the line, the agent listened carefully and immediately understood the urgency. They promised to verify my identity with the local police department and get back as soon as possible. I held the phone tightly, trying to steady my shaking hands, all the while feeling the cold stare of the officers burning into my back. Minutes felt like hours. Each second stretched with tension as I waited for the call to be returned. I could hear the murmurs and whispers behind me, the same officers who had mocked me earlier now watching, waiting, unsure of what would happen next. The silence was deafening. When the phone finally rang, the officer holding it stepped aside, his face suddenly drained of color. He looked pale, like the weight of what I represented had just settled on him. I could tell from the way he looked at me, there was shock, disbelief, and maybe even a hint of guilt. "Maya, your credentials have been confirmed by Homeland Security," he said quietly, his voice stripped of its earlier arrogance. "You are who you say you are." For a moment no one spoke. The room that was once filled with laughter and doubt turned cold and silent. The officers who had laughed in my face now avoided my eyes. It was as if the air around me had shifted, heavy with the realization of their mistake. I felt a wave of relief wash over me, but it was tangled with something else, anger. Anger that it took an official confirmation for them to respect me. Anger that all the times before, when no one verified, I was just another face dismissed. But mostly, I felt validation. The confirmation from Homeland Security was more than just words, it was proof that I belonged here, that I was real, that I mattered. Still, the moment was bittersweet. I knew this wasn't just about paperwork or badges, it was about the deep-rooted biases that let people doubt me from the start. It was about a system that made people like me fight twice as hard to be seen and heard. As I gathered my documents, the same officers who had mocked me now nodded with forced respect. But their eyes held a different story, the story of their own surprise, their own embarrassment. I left that room knowing something had changed. Not just in how they saw me, but in how I saw myself. The experience didn't break me, it strengthened me. It reminded me that even when the world tries to erase you, the truth can't be hidden forever. And sometimes it takes an unexpected moment, like Homeland Security's call to reveal it. That day didn't just leave me with a story to tell, it left me with scars I couldn't ignore. The humiliation, the doubt, the way those officers looked at me like I was a fraud, it wasn't just about one moment. It was a painful reminder of the countless times I'd been questioned, dismissed, or treated as less than because of my skin and my gender. Even after Homeland Security confirmed who I was, the emotional wounds didn't just disappear. I carried a heavy mix of relief and frustration. Relief that the truth came out, but frustration that it had to come from someone else's validation. Why wasn't I respected from the start? Why did I have to fight so hard just to be seen as credible? These questions haunted me long after I walked away from that room. This experience showed me, in the clearest possible way, how deep the roots of racial bias run, not just in that police station, but in the systems meant to protect and serve. I realized how much work still needs to be done to break down the barriers Black professionals face every single day. It's not just about proving your qualifications or showing your credentials. It's about battling the assumptions people make before they even hear your voice. It's about overcoming invisible walls built by prejudice and stereotypes, and that fight is exhausting. But something else grew inside me that day, an even stronger determination. I knew I couldn't let this moment define me, or hold me back. If anything, it lit a fire within me to push harder, speak louder, and demand respect, not just for myself, but for everyone who faces the same doubts and discrimination. I began to see my role not just as a federal agent, but as a voice for change. I wanted to use my story to shine a light on the injustices so many Black professionals endure silently, to remind others that they are not alone, and that their worth is not defined by the skepticism of others. This experience became a turning point in my life. It taught me resilience. The power to rise despite being knocked down. It taught me courage, the strength to stand tall even when others try to tear you down. And it taught me hope, that with persistence and unity, change is possible. I'm sharing this not because I want sympathy, but because the fight for respect and equality is far from over. We all need to recognize the biases that still shape our world and work together to dismantle them. And if my story can inspire even one person to keep fighting, to keep believing in themselves when others don't, then every painful moment was worth it. What the officers didn't know, and what made their disbelief even more ironic, was that my identity carried a story few would expect. Behind those official credentials and polished exterior, was a past I rarely shared. A secret that made their doubts sting even more deeply. I wasn't born into privilege. In fact, I grew up in a neighborhood where hope was often in short supply. My parents worked multiple jobs, just to keep food on the table. For years I carried the weight of their sacrifices, pushing myself harder to break free from the cycles that held so many around me back. But the secret wasn't just about my humble beginnings, it was something deeper. When I was a teenager, I was involved in a program run by Homeland Security itself, an initiative to identify and support young people with potential to serve in critical government roles, especially those from underserved communities. They invested in me, mentored me, helped me build a future I once thought impossible. That program gave me more than just opportunity. It gave me a new identity, a chance to rewrite the narrative for myself and my family. But it also meant that some parts of my past were kept confidential, protected for security reasons. Not even many of my coworkers knew this about me. So when those officers saw a Black woman walk in with official-looking papers, their first reaction was to doubt. They didn't realize they were dismissing someone who was a living example of the very program they might have admired if they had known. The moment Homeland Security confirmed my identity, they also verified this secret connection. The hidden story of how I was chosen and trained from a young age to protect this country. It was a confirmation not just of my name and title, but of my journey, a journey that had been shielded from view because of the sensitive nature of my work. Hearing the confirmation was surreal. On one hand, I felt immense pride. Pride that despite everything, I had made it, that the very system that once invested in me was now the proof that I belonged. On the other hand, there was vulnerability, knowing that this part of me was so closely guarded, yet so misunderstood. The officers had no idea the weight of the story they were dismissing. That moment changed everything for me. It wasn't just about credentials anymore, it was about owning my truth, even the parts hidden beneath layers of secrecy and protection. It was about recognizing that my identity was complex, woven from struggle, opportunity, sacrifice, and resilience. And it was about empowerment. Because when I finally saw the officers' faces turn pale with realization, I understood that sometimes the most powerful stories are the ones people never expect. That beneath the surface, behind every badge and document, there is a life shaped by challenges and triumphs that demand respect. This revelation gave me strength. It reminded me that who I am is bigger than their doubts or their laughter. It's a story of survival and purpose, and it's one I carry proudly every day, even when others try to erase it. This experience taught me more than just how to stand my ground, it showed me the power of resilience in the face of injustice. Too often people are judged not by their truth, but by the color of their skin or the assumptions others make. But we have the strength to rise above those doubts, to demand respect, and to support each other in that fight. If my story resonates with you, if you've ever felt overlooked or underestimated, know that you're not alone. Together we can challenge prejudice and create a world where everyone is seen and valued for who they truly are. Please like this video if you believe in standing up against injustice. Comment below with your thoughts or your own experiences. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories that inspire change, and share this video to help spread awareness. Every voice counts. Thank you for being part of this journey.